We're going to take a look into quilts of the past and how quilting is part of Southern culture and culture of so many families across the world. And then we're going to do an art project together. And that is something that we can put together as a classroom family. Quilts are messages of hope, freedom, and love. We're going to take a look into a city in Alabama, Gee's Bend. And this is a city in the deep south of our country where 4 generations of African Americans produce patchwork quilts. Many of the quilts are in museums today. And these women use salvage materials from worn out clothes and feed sacks, and they put them together into a mosaic art. This community of artists we're going to look at first is bound together by their special city of Gee's Bend. And they call on their enslaved ancestors and pass down through generations a quilting style that's like no other. Menzie Lee Petway, a quilter in Gee's Bend, says a lot of people make quilts for your bed, for you to keep warm. But a quilt is more. It represents safekeeping, it represents beauty, and you could say it represents family history. Let's take a look into a historical perspective of some of these quilts and what they...
These quilts are important as contemporary art for several reasons. The first being that they represent a tradition that has been passed on for a number of generations in a very small area in America, Gee's Bend, Alabama. The quilts reflect the history of that area and of this country in their making, and it asks all of us about genius, and where does it reside?
I can't cut straight. It attach more straight and then I cut it straight. Bill, he is telling us it was artwork. I didn't know nothing about the man. That thing and look wolf and you talking about art? He told me, yeah.
I never thought I would get honored and praised by the quilt. 10 or 12, 15 years ago, I didn't think this would happen. We were selling quilts, but we didn't think this would happen. Until Bill came along, he told us that we had artwork, and I didn't know what artwork was. He said, y'all have all this beautiful artwork hidden on y'all mattress and thing. He's just going to the mattress and trying to pull out the mattress, old quilts we have up under there. He said, this is fine artwork. I said, artwork? He said, yeah, this is artwork.
Yeah, before he came down, he would get about $5 a quilt. He told me he sell for $2,000. But I had never sold one for no $2,000 yet, but I had 2 sell. One was $12.50 and the other one was $15.50.
I was looking.
Well, the only thing that people had then was dress tails and breeches. That's like I told you, tore up a whole lot of pants leg and old breeches leg and old dress tail.
You'll find all of that being used, but that's because that's what was available. But when they took those and made things out of them, it's the same as a white artist carving marble. A quilt is like a Rosetta Stone. There's a language to it that needs to be decoded. To begin with, most of the forms are abstracted from life, which is what most abstract art in the world is. Abstraction is an ancient thing, not a modern thing. And in Gee's Bend, like in other places, women's quilt patterns came from life. The house top, which is squares and forms within a square, actually was first, I imagine, a woman lying in bed looking up at the ceiling, at the rafters, and the pattern they formed and making it and calling it a house top.
Lay down in your house, and you had to go out there to see the stars and the clouds.
They express a joy and a wonderment that makes you glad to be part of the human race. And I think it's a role of art to be inspiring. They're just quilts. All it is fabric stitched together. I mean, think of that. It's inanimate material that has a life force.
I can take you in hundreds and hundreds of old, abandoned black shacks, some of which predate the 20th century, and you'll see those newspapered walls that look just as good as any of the Cubist artists did. I mean, they didn't just slap newspapers indiscriminately on the walls. They made collages, and then they sat down and made quilts that reflected that aesthetic.
Mary Lee Bendoff is one of our exceptional women quilters here today. She was born in 1935. Tell me the story of the Ferry, because I understand that the ferry service was canceled because people in Gee's Bend got a little uppity during the civil rights movement. Am I right?
Yeah, because of the civil rights. They moved the ferry. That's what I said. They did it because they didn't want us to become a registered voter. We was going to cabinet every day to become a registered voter. So finally we made it, and we got over there. When we got over there, we went to the church. And when we got at the church, they threw tear gas on us. We came out and stood there singing and praying. Mommy, you never can jail us all. Oh, Mommy, you never can jail us all.
Here's a look, you might want to take a screenshot here, of 4 beautiful Gee's Bend quilts that are on display in famous museums all over the world. And it's something that you could use as inspiration for the quilts you're going to make. There's a legend I also want to look at today, and that is the Underground Railroad quilt legend. And let's look at what we know about it, what people believe, and then why they can also inspire us. So, during the enslavement period in our nation, the slaves escaped. Now, some believe enslaved people used to use quilts to write in code, to help them know where to go when they were escaping to freedom. Some of the quilt patterns had wagon wheels or tumbling box or bear paws to contain secret messages to help direct enslaved people to freedom. This is considered legend because there's no trace of these quilts, but an Atlanta-based quilt scholar says, of course there's no documentation. Literally, if anyone found out, they could lose their lives. So some people say, you know, this is a legend. This is not something that actually existed in America. And others say, well, yes, it would exist. It just, there's no record of it because it doesn't make sense why we would still have a quilt today. But according to the legend, a safe house along the Underground Railroad, it was indicated by a quilt hanging from the clothesline, and these quilts may have been embedded with a kind of code. So a bow tie might mean that they needed to dress in disguise. A bear paw might mean to follow an animal trail. A log cabin meant to seek shelter now the people here are safe to speak with. Sharon Tyndall is a person who works in quilt code in the South. And she says, when I'm creating a quilt, I'm focused on the purpose of the quilt. I'm thankful I'm able to create something of comfort. Regardless of whether you are looking at quilts from Gee's Bend or looking at quilts that are a nod to our past, all quilts bring comfort and love and a sense of safety and connection to their past. Because when these women are building these quilts, it's something that their grandmas did and their great-grandmothers did. And it's something for generations they have learned to do. And today, when you're building your quilt, I want you to think about what geometric patterns you want to include in your quilt. Thanks for listening about quilts with me, 5th graders. Now it's your chance to design a quilt. So you received this in your packet, and I want you to use your 12 by 12 paper, which is a quilt pattern that people really use. They start with a 12 by 12 square, and then they stitch together different pieces of colored fabrics. And you might think about those people who used their pants or their skirts or their old feed cloth that was used in the barn because that's the only cloth that they had. You might think about the different types of patterns that they use, like stars or triangles from roofs or fences or different things around you. Think about how you want to design your quilt and have fun cutting this paper up. I gave you 4 different colors to cut and glue on top of your 12 by 12 paper, and feel free to use other colors if you'd like. Have fun with this assignment, 5th graders. Can't wait to see what you come up with.